Congratulations on making it to the end of the JavaScript section of this course. You've covered a huge amount. You've gone from pretty much zero knowledge of JavaScript to understanding how to make your JavaScript interact with your HTML, how to make your pages behave as you want them, and then how to create complex code structures using variables, arrays, loops, and if statements. In this video, we're going to put all of that together to make a great fun reaction tester. And this is how it's going to work. So we've got nice instructions at the top there, and all it's going to do is measure how long it takes for you to click on the box after it appears. So once I click there, that took me quite a long time. That was quite a bit quicker. And now we're keeping the speed pretty high. So you can see we've got a lot of randomness here. It's randomly positioned, it's randomly sized, it's randomly colored, and it's randomly a square or a circle. So there's a lot of randomness built in there. And there are a couple of new things that we haven't seen. So we haven't used timers before. We're using timers both to measure the length of time and to have a bit of a random delay before the next square or circle appears. So those two things are new, and we haven't used random colors before either. But all three of those are pretty accessible with a quick Google. So I definitely recommend you have a good go at making this one yourself. As always though, if you have any problems, you can just watch me do it and see if you would have done it a different way. So I'll give you a minute now to pause the video and give it a shot. Best of luck. So I'm going to start off by keeping things fairly simple, and I'm just going to have a simple red square, which we'll then click on to make disappear. So much like our disappearing circles program from a few videos ago. So this should be pretty straightforward. I'm going to call it shape because I know that it's going to be a circle later on as well. And then in the head, we'll have a bit of style with a type of text / CSS, and then we'll select our shape ID and we'll go for a width of 200 pixels and a height of 200 pixels and a background color of red. Okay, lovely. There we go. Next then is the challenge to make it so that when we click on it, it disappears. Shouldn't be too bad. So document.getElementById as we're used to. The ID is shape. And we want to add an onClick and set it equal to a function. And all we want that function to do is to make the shape disappear. And we do that using, again, document.getElementById, shape. And hopefully you'll remember from an earlier video that we do style.display and we set that equal to none. Okay, let's take a look. That didn't work, I suspect, because we need the none to be in quotes. Hey, there we go. So well done if you didn't make that mistake. All right, now the main new thing, as I mentioned here, is the idea of a timer, which we haven't introduced, but let's see if we can have a Google and figure something out. So I'll go for something like JavaScript timer, JavaScript timing events. That looks promising, and it's good old W3 schools as well. So we want to work out how long it takes before the user has tapped on the square. Now, set timeout executes a function after waiting a specified number of milliseconds. We will need that actually later on when we want to make the square appear after a random period of time, but that's not what we need at the moment. At the moment, we need a timer to measure how long it takes. And I don't think this page is going to give me that. Okay, maybe I need to be a bit more detailed in my Googling. I'm going to leave that live though, because we'll need it later on. Let's try JavaScript measure time, something like that. Measuring time taken for a function to execute. Okay, we don't quite want to measure how long it takes a function, but we do want to measure how much time has passed, and this is now looking very promising. So it looks like we can use the date.getTime function to get the current time, and then we can use it again later on to work out the difference. Fantastic. Okay, so let's try that out in our code. So I'll make it so that the time is first measured when the page is loaded, and then when we click, we want to get a new time. So we'll call this end. And then, according to this code, we just subtract the two, and then that should give us the time that's passed in milliseconds. So we'll call this time taken, and that is end minus start. And then let's just do an alert for now. Alert time taken. All right. Let's have a look. And actually we want to make it disappear straight away, so we'll do that before we do any alerting or anything else. Okay, let's see. So if we click on there, 1976, that sounds about right. So that's just under 2 seconds. If I do it quicker, we get a smaller number. Brilliant. So first off, bear in mind that this is in milliseconds. So let's divide it by 1,000 to get the time in seconds. And let's also add a paragraph which is going to contain the time. We don't want it alerting every time. And the way I'll do that is with a span. I'll call it time taken. There we go. And it doesn't need to have any content initially. We're just going to fill it in here. So instead of alerting time taken, we're going to find the time taken by its ID. So get element by ID and time taken. So that will get the span. And then we want to set the inner HTML of that span to be time taken, and then we want to have an S to make it clear that this is seconds we're talking about. All right, let's take a look. So now, instead of alerting, it should display my time there. Brilliant. Okay, so now we've got our basic functionality in place. Our next challenge is to get our shape to appear after a certain number of seconds. So as it happens, the first Google link that I clicked on showed us how to do that. So this is the set timeout method. I always prefer looking at the examples rather than the kind of definition. I think they make it a bit clearer. And here, so we can use set timeout to run my function after 3 seconds or 3,000 milliseconds. Fantastic. That's exactly what we want to do. And we know all about functions because we learned about them in the previous video. So let's set up our function first off. Don't know why I copied that really. I didn't need to. We could have typed that out ourselves, but we've got it now. So my function is a little bit vague. We want it to make shape appear. So we do this using document.getElementById, and once again it's shape, and we set the display again, but this time not to none, but to a different option which will make it appear. Now, we haven't done that before, so we should just check. I think something like this. Okay, that one looks promising. Hide and reveal text and graphics. We already know how to hide it. We just need to make it display. And there we go. So style display is none, we've already used. So style display is block. That's what we need to make it display. So that essentially brings it back into the flow of the page again by giving it a display property of block. Okay, so that will make the shape appear. We also want to start the timer at that point. So what I'm going to do is I'll define my start up there, and then I'll update it when the shape appears. So this will run as soon as the page runs, and because the start variable is defined out here and then the function is defined within that, we'll be able to use the start variable inside that function. So again, this is about scope. Anything that's defined inside the function can't be used outside the function, but things that are defined outside the function can be used inside the function. I hope that makes sense. And then we just need a command to make the shape appear after, let's say, 1 second for the moment. And it looks like the command that we need for that is set timeout, and then the name of the function, and then the number of milliseconds. So let's do that here. So I don't want to run my function, I want to run make shape appear. And let's do it after 1,000 milliseconds. Alright, so hopefully that makes sense. If not, just go back and watch the last few seconds again, because we did quite a lot of new stuff there. One thing I will need to change is I'll need to actually hide the square before we start, otherwise making it appear won't make any difference. Alright, let's take a look. So fingers crossed, the shape will now appear after 1 second. There we go. And it will then count the counter from when it appears. So this is the first time that the reaction timer actually works. Let's see how quick I can get there. 0.2 seconds, not bad. See if you can do better than that. Alright, so I'm happy with how things are going at the moment. Next, I'm going to make it so the amount of time that it takes for the square to appear is not fixed. So we've got 1,000 here, so let's make it a random number instead. So I think we can pop that straight in here. We know how to create a random number. So this will create a random number between 0 and 1. We need to decide the maximum length of time that we want for this to appear. So we don't want it to be 10 minutes, otherwise the user is going to get very bored. So let's say 2 seconds for now. So this will give a random number between 0 and 2,000. So up to 2 seconds. Let's just check that that works. Yep, looks promising. I think that was different to before. We'll have to wait and see. Alright, so we're moving along pretty quickly here. We've got our random time. The main issue, of course, is that it only happens once, and then the game is over, which isn't great. But that's actually really easy to fix because of the way that we've set up this function. So now all we need to do is when the user clicks on the shape is to run the function make shape appear again, and then this will make the shape appear. One problem though is that that's going to do it immediately. So as soon as I click on it, it's going to reappear immediately. So there's two solutions to that. Either I could bring in the set timeout method here as well, or I could bring the set timeout method into the function. And hopefully, if you've been listening carefully to what I've been saying about functions, you'll want to do the second one, because we avoid having the same code twice in our script if we possibly can. So it makes more sense, I think, to set up another function, with a small f, which I'll call, say, appear after delay. And then that's where we'll put our instruction to make the shape appear. And then instead of calling that directly, we'll have appear after delay there, and also appear after delay inside our click code as well. So hopefully that makes more sense. If you can imagine, an immediate benefit of that is that if we didn't do it that way, we'd have to have the set timeout method twice. So if we wanted to change the maximum from 2 seconds to 5 seconds, for example, then we'd have to change that in 2 places, which isn't a nice thing to have to do. So I think it makes more sense to keep it as it is. All right then, let's have a look. So we should get a bit of a delay. Oh no, a bit too much of a delay there because I've forgotten the parentheses. Always a parentheses when you've got a function that you're using. Let's try that again. Okay. Fantastic. That's working really well. Brilliant. So now we're going to make the game a little trickier by moving the square around. And as always, there's a few ways that you could do this, but I'm going to do it with positioning. So you'll remember, hopefully, that if we set our position to relative, then we can do things like setting the top to 100 pixels, which will shift it down 100 pixels. And we can also set the left to say 200 pixels, which will shift it right, or give it a left margin of 200 pixels. So what we want to do is to introduce an element of randomness with the top and left. So we'll do that in the make shape appear. And you should be able to guess really how we do that with JavaScript. We get the shape in the usual way, and then we're affecting its style here. And we're affecting the top. And we're going to set the top just before we introduce any randomness. Let's just set the top to 50 pixels. And then we'll just check. It should be down 50 pixels. There we go. So we have moved it down a certain number of pixels using JavaScript. But we want that to be a random number. So let's get rid of our 50 and let's bring in a variable. I'll call it top. And this is going to be the number of pixels. And we want that to be a random number. So math random. And if that's 50 pixels, let's say up to a maximum of 400 pixels. And then we just use top plus and then px on the end to be clear that it's pixels that we want to move it. So now it should be in a random position vertically each time. There we go. Excellent. So now it's just the same thing with left. So let's have a left, which is math.random times, let's go for 400 again. And then we want to do exactly the same thing. Get the shape element by its ID, and this time we'll set the style dot left, and that's going to be left. And then pixels on the end to give our units. So now it should be randomly positioned both vertically and horizontally. Brilliant. We're really getting there. Okay. While we're really into our randomness, I want to give it a random size as well. So let's give it a random width of, let's go up to 400 pixels. That's going to potentially let it be really small, but let's see how that works out. And then once again, get the element and set its width to width plus px. And I'll set the height to the same thing, because I don't think we want sort of strange shaped boxes. I want to keep them all as squares. So let's see what effect that has. Yeah, I quite like that. I think that makes it interesting. Okay, 400 may be a little bit large. Let's go for 300. All right, so really it's now just a matter of refining the game a little bit. And one thing I definitely want is a random color generator. So this is again something we haven't done before. So let's see what we can get from a Google. Random color generator in JavaScript. That looks pretty good. Let's have a look. Okay, fantastic. So this looks like it does what we want. Let's just run through it and make sure that we understand what's going on. Okay. Right, so what this is doing is taking the letters and numbers that make up our HTML color codes and splitting them into an array. So this dot split splits a string into an array. So what we've got here is letters being an array of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and A, B, C, D, E, F. Then we've got our color string, which starts off with a hash, as HTML colors always do. And then we've got a for loop, which starts with I is equal to 0, goes on as long as I is less than 6, and increments I by 1 each time. And then, well, we haven't seen this before, this is a way of appending to a string. So color plus equals means we take color as it is and we add to it letters. So that's this array up here. And this is now familiar to us as well. So we're getting a random number up to 16 and we're using mathfloor to effectively get a random integer or whole number between 0 and 15. So essentially this is creating a random HTML color code. Brilliant. So we learned a couple of new tricks there, as well as got some code that will be useful for us. So let's add this function definition to our code. It's doing some nice automatic indenting for us there. Lovely. So now we've got our code in there. Let's change our background color. So document.get element by ID shape and then style, and where is it, background color. Let's just see it all on one line. So we're going to want get random color, empty pair of parentheses because it doesn't need any variables passed to it, and that's it. So that should give us a random color each time as well. There we go. Bit of green, bit of purple, bit of grey, bit of blue, pink. Fantastic. A little bit of green. Okay, this is looking great. So there's actually only one more feature I want to add on the shape itself, and that is I want it occasionally to appear as a circle. So let's say we want it to be a circle 50% of the time. We can do that with an if statement. And we'll take, once again, good old math.random. And so if that's bigger than 0.5, then we'll make it a circle. We could have less than there as well. Doesn't make any difference, but this will happen on average half the time. So to make it a circle, hopefully you remember, we get the element by its ID as before, and style, and what we want to do is set the border radius to be 50%. There we go. So that means it should be a circle. There we go. 50% of the time. 2 circles, 3 circles, 4 circles, and it's vanished. I think that's a problem with our code. I think it's there somewhere, but it's so small I can't see it. So I think we're going to need a minimum size. It does appear to be a circle every time, which is unlikely. So let's have a look and see if something's gone wrong. Ah, yes. Can you see what the issue is? It's quite a good one. What it is because it was a circle the first time, we set the border radius to 50%, and then the border radius was set to 50% full stop. So even if it wasn't greater than 0.5 the second time, it was still a circle. So we need to add an instruction to say if that's not the case, then set the border radius back to 0. Well done if you spotted that. So as before, border radius 0. Okay, let's have a look. So now we've got a square and a circle and something very small. Oh, there it is. And a square and something very small again. Okay, we definitely want to have a minimum size here. So let's change the width to be a random number from 0 to 200, and then we'll add 100 to that. And that effectively gives us a random number between 100 and 300. So it shouldn't get too small. There we go. Brilliant. So we're nearly done. All I'm going to do is wrap it up a little bit, give it a nice font and a bit of a title at the top so it looks like more of a finished article. So that's pretty trivial in the scheme of things. But still, makes all the difference. So we'll call it reaction time up there. And then we'll have an H1 which says test your reactions. And a little bit of instruction. So let's say click on the boxes and circles as quickly as you can. And I'm going to use a neat sans serif font, and we'll do that for everything. So I'll use body, and then we'll set the font family to, I'll keep it simple and just choose sans serif. See how that looks? Okay, nice. I'd like a little bit more emphasis of your time down here. So let's make that bold. And we'll do that with a class of bold. So font weight is bold. And there we go. So let's have a look. That's working great. Fantastic. Hope you enjoyed that one. See if you can get a better time than me. And as always, there's a lot of ways you could extend this. So you might want to save the user's quickest time, for example. So it displays that constantly, and then that gives them a challenge to beat it. You might want to show their average time, or you might want to change the way the box displays. Completely up to you. But I hope you enjoyed that, and as always, I hope you managed to do a fair bit of it yourself, or if not, that you realized after we completed it that, yeah, maybe I could have done more of that. Congratulations once again for getting pretty much to the end of this chapter. We've just got one small video left, and that's going to show you, just like with CSS, how we can store our JavaScript in a separate file using external JavaScript.